Welcome. I'm Julie Bacon, and you're listening to the Mindset Coaching for Handlers podcast, a podcast for dog handlers who are on a mission to achieve big goals. Here I share lessons, insights, personal stories, and tools you can apply during your next show, trial, or test to help you strengthen your mental game and hopefully cue more consistently. Be sure to check out the show notes where you'll find details about the episodes, plus important links, including the link to the Dogged Planner and Workbook created just for handlers on a mission. So if you're ready to improve your competitive mindset, get out of your own way, and connect with your dog like never before, then it's time to get comfy, bring an open mind, and work your mindset. Hey there, and welcome back to the podcast. You probably know by now how strongly I feel about taking breaks, not just for our dogs, but also for ourselves. So I'm taking my own advice. And for the next few weeks, I'll reshare the most popular episodes from this year, aka season 4, and I'll return in January with all new episodes. In the meantime, keep working on your mindset skills and have a fantastic time this holiday season. Enjoy this remix. Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited today to be welcoming Cynthia Horner, who, as everybody knows, just won Westminster. I guess it's been a few weeks now. But Cynthia, you were way more than just winning Westminster. Not that that's not like a massive thing, but your career didn't like start last month. Tell everybody a little more about like all you've been up to and, all the different teams and things that you do.
Sure. So winning Westminster was great. Truant, my border collie, also won it the year before. He sort of gets sidetracked because Nimba was the first 12-inch and mixed breed, but he also was able to win it. I have been on multiple teams. I think probably 15 teams by now that have traveled to Europe. And I've won AKC Nationals 3 times. I've won USDA Nationals several times. I've won the US Open, different events in it several times. So I like standing on boxes, and I am lucky enough to have some amazing dogs that I get to share my life with. And so we have a lot of fun playing the game of agility.
That's awesome. Yeah, standing on boxes is always very fun. And I have the honor of, being in your geography. So I get to see you run and be kind of around you. And I'm hoping to come to one of your seminars maybe in August. Fingers crossed.
Wonderful. Yes.
But mostly here on this podcast, we talk about mental game stuff. So as I was watching Westminster and as I've watched you at other times, I always think about like, what's the mental prep? Like, do you think that you're just as good mentally as you are like in your handling skills? Like how do you prepare for something like Westminster? Like, how does that even work?
So I actually think my mental game is maybe even stronger than my handling skills in many ways. And I think one of the things that has helped my mental game is that I grew up riding horses and showing horses. So I am not a stranger to competition. And I think when you start at a younger age, you realize it's just really more fun and games. You don't really worry about stress and pressure. Certainly as you get older, I always feel like there's a hierarchy. Like when you first start competing in dog agility, everybody's nervous, especially if they haven't done other sports before. And then as you move up the chain and you get to go to your first national event, and then you get nervous at the national event, but then maybe at the local event, you're no longer nervous because you realize it's just a local trial and the outcome, while important to you, really is super important overall. I usually use local trials these days just to practice different skills. And then once you move past the bigger events, the regionals into nationals and into world competitions, you start to realize even those national competitions really aren't as nervous or have as much stress as, say, an international competition. There is nothing like an international team competition to really see where your mental game is. But at the end of the day, I try not to think of being nervous. I try to just go back to the processes. If I cue my dog on time for this, the outcome will be what I want it to be. I don't think about the end game or any of the things, the coaches, the crowd. I am really and I'm not sure how, but I just tuned that all out. I absolutely could not hear the crowd in New York until Nimble jumped in my arms. And then I heard, because they were standing on their feet and it was quite loud. So I
Yeah.
knew that had been happening the whole time, but to me, it was just me and my dog running this course. Can I cue her? Can
Yeah.
I get that backside? Can I leave her pulse? Can I stay connected with my dog? So if you think about the processes, I think it's much better for your mental management. And I have read many mental management books. So I have worked on my mental game quite a deal over the last, 20 years I've been doing agility. And
Sure.
it certainly has helped. I've actually been to a Lanny Basham seminar. I've, worked with this.
Mhm.
I've done a lot of different mental management type things to help me. But I do, at the end of the day, it is something that I enjoy doing with my dogs. It is dogs jumping over PVC. It is not, world peace. And I think that helps ground
Yeah.
and be able to perform at my best.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, you're singing my song, right? In terms of like the process goals and people like Landy Basham and sticking to that, and of course, fellow horse girl or
Mhm.
former horse girl. And so I think that that does help. I think I remember a point in my like horse career, like because this for me doing what I do started very young, right? I started to get obsessed with the mental side of it when I was like 14, 15, and I would look at other riders and I'd be like, what is that look on their face, right? Like, how
Right.
is it that to me at the time from the outside, it looked very like steely is my word that I always go to, right? And it always started like in the schooling area and like just that kind of vibe. And I was like, I want more of that. And
Right.
so there was a point in my life that that became a conscious decision. And then when I got into dogs, I was shocked that like nobody was into mental management. And I shouldn't say nobody, very few people, and even fewer talked about it, right? And so I think that there's a bunch of people listening probably that are like, oh my God, like I just insert myself into your story and just be that way mentally? So was it, or I mean, you are reading about it now, but like, was it organic for you as a kid? Was it like was always a draw for you? And like, what did you find any holes in yourself that you have been working to improve?
I don't really think I personally, when I was a kid riding, and I did okay in horse competitions, I don't think I thought of the mental game too much. It really was, for me at a young age, and I think I sold my horse when I was 18 and went to college. I just, it wasn't part of, I just, I had my coaches, I went in, I did, and it was, just truly fun. I think I started to think more about the mental game the first time I made my first world team, like about 10 or 12 years ago. And then it was a little more serious because now I am going overseas to represent the USA. I want to do my best. You have a coach there. And there are, many, I've had some wonderful, wonderful coaches, probably all of them. But there definitely is a little bit more pressure when you go overseas and you are representing USA. You want to do your best. So I think my first one, like, because I was a alternate that moved up, I didn't have time to think too much about the mental game. But when I stepped to
Mhm.
the line, I was definitely aware of the chanting of Team USA's chairs and
Mm.
and luckily I had a very grounded dog who Spice, who was wonderful, and she probably covered me and helped me, and it got me through that competition. And she actually did very, very well. I think we were bronze medalists for team that year, and she was maybe fourth in the overall competition. But I came
Wow.
home and I definitely realized I need to work on this aspect of it because I don't want to be thinking about all of those outside influences when I'm getting ready to walk into the ring. I truly want to walk
Right.
into the ring and look at my dog and say, how do I best communicate how to get around this course with that dog and almost isolate everything else. So
Mm.
I like to think that I'm going into a funnel and at Spice, when we would first start going to competitions and winning things, I always had this little thing with her. I'd look at her and I'd say, why not us? Because we had as many
Ooh, I
skills as
love that.
anybody else and we were good. And I was just like, why not us? Because, we weren't well known
Yeah.
at that time. And I thought, but we're good. So, or I felt we were good in our teamwork. So I was like, we could do this too. Why not us? Now it's a little different because I do feel, particularly with Nimble, we are, if I go clean, we are more of the favorites sometimes on events. And so I actually asked Lanny I was like, well, what do you sort of do? How do you handle that when you have that other
Right.
pressure of, people, there tends to be when I run in challengers, I was aware of it. I walk out, it's dead silent in that stadium. And that's also a little bit can be part of the mental,
Yeah.
pressure that you feel. And so he just said, well, you can always remember why you might be the favorite. And that helps me also, like, and at the end of the day, I do realize that you're going to have great weekends, you're going to have great runs, and you're going to have runs that look like you started agility 24 hours ago and everything in between. I mean, you're not going to be able to be perfect every time you step to the line. And I think that makes you realize then, as long as you're trying your best, and again, I go back to the process. I cue my dog to the best of my ability, and things should work out in the end if I do my job and I've trained my dog to do her job. So I
Yeah.
try to keep it just very grounded that way. But certainly, the first run when I step to the line in England, I will probably feel a little more pressure. Like now, like when I step to the line in Westminster, I really don't feel very much pressure to an event like Westminster or even finals at AKC Nationals. I am mostly just trying to keep my dog, their mental game together because my dog can get quite over aroused. So coming in, I spend my energy making sure she's nice and calm. Going into Westminster, I told them I didn't want to get on the little box to release me until I really had to, because I knew
Yeah.
once she got on there, she would start to get very, very excited. And they let me do that, which was quite nice. So then by the time we stepped to the field, she was in a good frame of mind. I was in a good frame of mind. And so it just worked out well from there.
Is the difference between like those events where it's individual, like how you do is on you versus a team event where do you feel more pressure because you're doing it for the team or for the country or for something even bigger than yourself? Does that change for you?
Absolutely. So if it's so in EO, when I go to EO next month, in England, you have individual rounds and you have team rounds. And of course, then you're also part of Team USA. So feel a little bit of pressure, but pressure is a privilege. And it really is. That is the saying going down the Westminster Hall. And I
Yeah.
absolutely believe it is. I don't look at pressure as a bad thing. Pressure to me is it makes me perform better. I absolutely usually perform better
Same.
in a pressure situation or a bigger event than I do at a local trial because I think I care more about the bigger event. But when you feel that little bit of that pressure, some people either perform worse or better. I tend to luckily perform better. But that's because I think I do realize that while the pressure is there, it's not against me. It's actually inflates me. I think of it as like a balloon inflating me to be better.
Oh,
But
I like that.
when you walk into a team event as part of Team USA, you do have three other teammates on my team at EO. I want to do my best for not only me, but for them. I don't want to be the weak link on the team. So
Yeah.
it definitely do feel a little more pressure of that, but I do realize most of the time your fellow teammates understand it is agility and things do happen. And I know I would never hold it against a teammate for making a mistake and having an E. And I'm pretty sure they wouldn't hold it against me also.
Yeah. Do you get, because of the amount of teams that you compete on and with and for, right, to get onto these teams, how does comparison sneak up on you ever? Like, because you're having to be competitive for those spots, and are you comparing yourself against other people, or are you just using them as a measuring stick or as motivation? Like, how does comparison factor into your life, if at all?
I try not to compare too greatly. I certainly am aware of, so Nimble internationally measures into the medium height because their cutoffs are so small in Europe. And, I am definitely aware of the other 16-inch dogs that may be trying out, but I try not to compare my team to them because my dog is very individualistic to me. And so I always feel that if I go to tryouts and I do well, then, hopefully I make the team. If I don't make the team, it's okay. I've already had fun at tryouts because tryouts
Yeah.
are an amazing, uplifting, inspirational experience anytime you go to any tryout. I always come back more motivated to do agility after. So I always feel like if I weren't make the team, and I've had bad tryouts. A funny little story. I was driving home with someone from St. Louis to AWC tryouts a few years ago. I think it was right before Truett won Westminster. And I had some really close runs. Like I think I had a fault in round one. In round two, I think I ate it like obstacle 17 of 21. And then it was
Ugh.
obstacle 18 of 21. And then it was obstacle 20 of 21. It
Ah,
was always the end, which then made me think like, well, okay, I have to go back and start working on my fitness aspect of it, because if I'm eating
mm,
at the end, maybe it's because I'm tired. I don't know if that truly was the answer, but that was my solution to try to help it. But I remember driving back, and my friend said, I feel so bad for you. You were like so close to going clean on every single run. And these were very hard courses, ISC type courses. And I looked at her and I'm like, well, I was like, that's the way Julie is. You're not going to have great weekends every time. I was like, and we were happened to be going to Westminster the following week. And I was like, Truett might go to Westminster next weekend and win it all. And he did. I mean, it was just, so that's the thing about dog agility. Like you can have what I call a learning weekend. It's not a bad weekend. I learned
right,
that, maybe I have to work on this, or I have to work on another skill with him. But just because you have one weekend that's not perfect, it doesn't mean the very next weekend under different courses, you can't shine again.
right.
So I try to always
Yeah.
keep that in the back of my mind that, just because you're having one off weekend, shake it off, learn from it, learn what you can do to improve about it, and then move on, leave that in the past, take your learnings from it, leave it in the past, and certainly move on to the
Mhm.
next event so that you can be the best that you can be in the future.
Yeah. Perfect. Perfect. So, in that you just mentioned, working on your fitness, do you, I think about things as like, in order to be strong mentally, you have to be strong physically as well. And there's stamina for your mental stamina, being able to like sit at a trial all day, even waiting takes a lot of stamina because you can get very tired and run down. And your physical stamina isn't just your ability to run, or it's not just what you weigh, it's actually your ability to hold up in some of those environments. So
Absolutely.
like do you actually like address your physical and mental, or well, we talked about some mental, but your stamina piece of it, or does it come organically for you? Like what's the balance of that?
Um, I think like everybody else, I can get tired. The hardest event I probably run every year is the US Open. So the US Open is 5 days. Walkthroughs are at 6 o'clock, 6:15 a.m. You are walking several courses at once and in multiple ranks.
Oof.
If you're running multiple dogs there, you may have biathlon jumping in rings 4 and 5 with two different dogs. And at any national event, they never set the course exactly the same. They can't, it's
Right.
impossible. So you have to go and walk, both rings the same course. Plus you're walking other rings back to back to back of different courses too. So you might be walking 4 or 5 courses at, 6:15 a.m. You may not run some of those courses until 2 or 3 in the afternoon, right? So and
Wow.
you've already run other courses. And then if you're lucky enough, and it seems like I'm somehow lucky enough that you're in finals at night, and the big dogs like my border collie don't usually stop running until 10 p.m. And
That's
then you do
crazy.
that for 5 days
That's
in a
crazy.
row. And it is
Wow.
truly exhausting. So that is always the hardest one from what you're talking about, the mental and the physical, because while you do have some downtime, it's really a challenging event because it does wear on you. It does make you fatigued mentally and physically. And so I do try to stay in the best shape on both that I can. And I try to take down times, even if it's just a walk around the grounds of Jacksonville Equestrian Center. Usually I'm lucky enough to have an RV there that I rent. So I can go and I can go sit in my RV, maybe have a cup of coffee midday or something, just especially if I have finals that night. I want to make sure I have enough stamina and energy.
Yeah.
And I'm very careful
Yeah.
about what I eat, particularly on those days. I want to have, foods that fuel my body to make sure that I can still be strong in the evening and not just, bad things.
Yeah. 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 So some people are listening to that and they get lost on their AKC course on the weekend. Like, how are you holding, like, did you have to really work on holding all of those courses and all of those plans, right, for different dogs in your brain as you're walking at 6 and running at 3? Like, how does your brain figure that out? Or just if you had to learn that over time?
I've definitely had to learn it over time. The other thing is and I've worked on a lot of different, and it's also part of mental games. And I actually run a workshop on mind games where things change on course and you have to react to it.
Yeah.
Like you can't get stuck like that, deer in the cross lights. You have to be able to say, okay, my dog turned wrong and I have to go with it. So I put pressure on handlers in this workshop that I do to make sure that they can handle anything that sort of happens at them. So when I go to the US
Hmm.
Open, there are many, many courses. And I remember this past year, we were walking, it was still dark. I think it was really early
Oh
in the
my
morning.
God.
It's dark outside. The outside courses had no lights. When I came back to run it 3 hours later, it was lighted. The course looked completely different to me.
I'm sure.
It was
Wow.
just, and it threw me for a second, and it was like, okay, this course is completely different. But you do, after you run one rotation, you can go back to the next rotation you're looking at, and you can look in and watch the dogs run just sort of as a refresher of what the course is. But those memorization skills really are paramount. But I feel like the more you work them and the longer you do agility, hopefully they get better for you. There's also some
Yeah.
games you can do, like I know I've had some clients that had trouble memorizing courses. Like, look at a course map, flip the paper over. Can you write that course out? And how accurate are you?
Hmm.
And mentally think about the course in your mind. Don't just look at it. Can you close your eyes and really see the whole course, everything? Also, I feel like what helps with that a great deal is people that look for dogs' lines have a little bit more easier time and understanding where a course will go than people who try to look just for
There's
numbers.
this
So
obstacle. Yeah.
sometimes I will actually miss a number because I'm always looking for the line. So I'll be walking
Hmm.
and I'll be like, well, the line should go here. And I'm like, oh, wait, they put that number where it's not maybe a good line. And so I didn't
Right.
want it to go that way. And so that's when I'll get caught like, oh, I missed that. But I do think in general, if you look at the lines that your dog and understands a dog's path and lines, then it makes more sense. The courses will always make more sense than if you're just really looking at 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, which doesn't help. I also think it's a hindrance when you look at 1, 2, 3, 4 so strongly on your walkthrough, because unless you are much, 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 much faster than your dog, you can't read the numbers, and you don't want to read the numbers because it'll disconnect from your dog when you're running. So you really should
Yes.
try not to look at the numbers on your walkthrough. And I think that helps then remember courses better and where they're going to go.
Yeah,
And
because you have to rely on other factors to
yeah.
remember them versus like what we learned in school, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, right? I mean, that's kind of old school. Okay. Very
Yes,
cool.
after my first walkthrough, I try not to look at numbers anymore. So the first walkthrough, I might look at numbers a little bit just to, make sure that I'm correct. I didn't miss one because I thought that the line should go here, and the judge obviously should go somewhere else, and it's their course, so they're right.
Yeah.
Um, but after that, I try not to look at the numbers again during my course walkthroughs because they're not helpful, and I won't be able to look at them again when I'm running my dog, obviously, because if I did, then I would just be disconnected, like I said. So I very much try not to pay too much attention to the numbers once I've done my first walk.
Yeah. And then throughout the day or any other day for that matter, like how do you use or do you use visualization, to it's because I always encourage people don't just use visualization to like remember the course, but you're
Mhm.
using visualization as like how do you want to feel? What's the position? Where's your dog? Like, you're trying to use all of your senses because really great visualization is like becomes like a memory in your brain and tells your brain, like research shows, tells your brain that you've already done it and you've done it successfully. So this is great. So how do you use visualization like throughout the day, especially on those crazy days?
So I will walk, particularly after you finished one rotation. I will go watch the other rotation, but certainly as part of my warm up with my dogs at bigger events, I am going through the course. And sometimes I try to go through the course in fast time because of when I'm running
Mm,
in a slow time. So I'll play around with
yep.
little tempo changes on that. But yes, I definitely visualize, and obviously always positive. I would never visualize mistakes because that's not
Yes.
sensitive. So I
That's
always
right.
visualize perfect runs, but I will go through and I will visualize the handling, where my verbals have to take place, and I do think about like, well, if my dog is a little wide there, like how do I be proactive to make sure my dog isn't going to take a jump in a way I am not expecting. But I will go over visualization of a course at a big event, probably 25, 30 times before I'm actually running the course. So I've already run it mentally so many times
Love it.
before I get into the course to run it with my dog. So by the time that happens, it's almost second nature. And it feels,
Yeah.
and they do say like visualization is like 50% of, being successful.
Yeah.
Like you can like they've done studies where if people think about a course versus
Hmm.
actually practicing it, and they just think about practicing it, it was almost equal. So you
Yeah.
almost need to practice with your dog if you can do it with yourself so much. I think a good quality of both is probably perfect. Do some visual, I can't speak this morning.
Easy for you to
I
say.
had
Yeah.
I had team practice, and we had a really fun but long weekend. And then I did a seminar yesterday and drove home late
Yeah.
last. So,
No,
um,
no, it's all good. Those are tongue twisters anyway.
but I feel like if you can do a combination of both, it's probably the best that you
Yeah,
can.
for sure. For sure. So one of the things that we talk a lot about on this podcast is goal setting. And I'm really big on, setting the goals in the beginning of the year, yes, but then in order to do that, like you have to have a plan. Like when I first started doing agility, people would be like, "Oh, what's your goal?" "Oh, I'm gonna mock." Well, like today? Oh no, in a couple years. But then there was no really like plan to like make sure that that happens. And of course, you're dealing with even bigger goals. So like do you sit down at the beginning of the year and you're like, this is what I want to accomplish this year, and then you map out like how you're going to get there? I mean, I know you talked about a little bit about some events are just practice events for bigger events, but like, how do you figure that out? Because your schedule is madness. So like, how are you figuring out your goals and then getting your stuff done in the midst of teaching and doing all this other stuff for other people, and of course having this be your job?
So this year's goal, I don't always have a goal for every single dog. Like
Okay.
right now, for my young dog, I mean, I guess I do have a goal, try to get him on as many ISC fun type things to develop his skills and maybe get enough points along the way to go to tryouts. That would be sort of a goal. So my goals are more training goals. Like I want my dog to be able to layer the dog walk from 30 feet, stay in the poles, or bypass a tunnel on the way to the poles. And I'm layering the dog walk from 30 feet. So I have more training goals like that I need, build, better discrimination skills for my young dog. So I don't really think of, for a young dog, it's more about training skills and competition
Yeah.
skills. Certainly for Nimble, as soon as I got the phone call inviting me back on the EO team for this year going to England, then my goals for her became be as prepared as I can be for EO. And hopefully, potentially, if I'm prepared, I don't like really to do outcome type goals because I feel like we don't have super control over those. Um,
Correct.
but be prepared as much so that hopefully I can go clean in an individual round and make finals on the outside. That would be lovely. So I have built up all year long since to go try to run under as many of the judges that will be at EO as possible. So for me, that meant Martin Cavell, even before we knew which judges were judging what, now we do know that, he was judging the Invitational in Chicago, for the UKI Invitational. And so, of course, he's an EO judge. So I'm going to Chicago to run his two courses and my whole goal of that event was to cue my dog as well as I could on his courses and go clean. Luckily, that goal was accomplished. And, but more, it came down to, I want to get to know him as a judge, what he's going to present to us, so that if I see it again in England and there's something that I don't feel comfortable with, I can go home and work on that before I go to EO. So every single thing that I've done this year has been sort of prepping me for that event for her. Even Westminster, it's a great trial, it's a great day, but I wanted to try to make finals mostly because I wanted to get her into that environment, that
Mm-hmm.
crowded environment, because if we are lucky enough to make EO finals, it is pretty intense.
Crowd's going to be crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
crowd is crazy. You have, hundreds of people around those rinks, sort of very similar to New York. So I wanted to get her into that situation. I wanted to go to AKC Nationals to feel that pressure and try to do that. And luckily we were able to make challengers. So again, it was sort of that try to go clean thing. Unfortunately, we had a bar and we didn't go clean, but that's okay. It still was a good prep. I knew that everything else went really well on a fairly complicated course.
Yeah.
And so everything I do up into EO is to try to get ready for that, to run harder courses, to compete, on these harder courses. So I've done the whole year or over a year almost on just trying to make sure that we're as well prepared, because I do believe nothing helps a great mental game as preparation. If I feel
Yeah.
totally prepared for an event, then I don't have to worry, then the mental game becomes a little bit easier. If I go
Sure.
into, if you've studied for a test and you're going into take that test and you're going to really do well on it, you're going to feel more comfortable. You're not going to feel as much stress to that test, even if it's an important test. If you
Right.
have not studied for that test, you're going in the
Yep.
anxiety level and your mental game, your anxiety level goes up, your mental game's going to plummet. So
Mm-hmm.
so my whole plan all year has been, let me be as prepared as I can for EO so that hopefully I can do my best over there. And so that was my goal for her. So, again, I don't like outcome goals. It is always about, if I can prepare myself to do well in rounds 1 and 2, then hopefully I do go through for finals, but I can't control that because,
Right.
I may have a wide turn and the competition's so tight. I finish 19th and they take top 18 in any round to finals. Well, that's not much. I can control it by trying to make sure we don't have a wide turn, but I can't
Right.
control what my other competitors are going to do. If they
Right.
all ace it and they have faster dog, there's nothing I can do on that. So I feel like I can only control what I can do with my dog. And I
Yep.
try not to worry so much, which goes back to your other question. I try not to worry so much about what my other competitors are doing because
Right.
they're in my control. So
Correct.
the more I ignore, I'm aware that they're there maybe, but I don't really think too much about that other than I know they're there. Um,
Yeah.
I want to just be as prepared and control my own emotions and my ability to do well by cueing my dog. And that's really the best way to prepare for a mental game, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, could not agree more, right? I'm a Lanny Basham fan as well, and we probably read a lot of the same books and things like that. Um, I think I think for me, what separates talking to people like you who've done some really elite things and some people who are struggling is that focus on process goals, right? I think every elite handler that I talk to, they barely have outcome goals, right? I mean, like you wanted to get on teams or do some of the things, or you got the phone call to be on a team, so now you have to be prepared. But again, preparation is process because that's within your control, and how you do that day, you can't control the other 17 dogs that are trying to get into finals, et cetera, et cetera. So I feel like it's such a hard thing to get through to handlers because there's things they want. And because some of the systems that we compete in, there are podiums involved, there are big fancy ribbons involved, there are all of these things that people want. And so even to your own students, what is that advice that you like, stop wanting things and start focusing on process? Like, how do you make that connection for them? How do you get through to them that way?
So I always try to tell my students, remember why you started the game of agility, to have fun with your dog. Right.
Yes.
So I think the number one thing should be, are you enjoying what you're doing with your dog? Because I think if you go back to that step, I like being with my dog. My dog doesn't really care about the ribbons. I mean, they really don't. I mean, Nimble likes her little Westminster trophy, I guess, if I could put food in it. Other than that, she
Right.
probably doesn't care about it too much. So I always go back to I've had a dog who's really, really fast years ago. He was an amazing border collie, super fast. but he sometimes would knock bars, and it would be very frustrating because we'd have the fastest time at some regional or something, and yet we had a bar, so
Yeah.
we didn't get our buy. And it can be discouraging, and it can shake you when it happens over and over again.
Yeah.
But I had to change my mindset. I had to be, do I enjoy trialing this dog? The answer was yes, I loved running that dog. So when I sort of took the pressure off us to go out there and cue all the time, and I did,
Mhm.
I did do some jump training too. I'm not gonna say it just magically happened, but then
Right.
things really did turn around, but I think I had to change my mindset in that I need this now. And I always tell my students, you don't need this now. Your dog doesn't need this now. It is a journey. Some journeys have different paths than others. I've had a dog, my border collie truant, he made the first EO team at 3. My Sheltie, who's two and
Wow.
a half, he will probably not make a team by 3. He's a much more slower developing dog, and that's fine. Every dog teaches us a different thing, and we always end up with a dog we need to learn and improve ourselves. So I always look at it as in a journey of how we improve ourselves. So I try to tell my students, don't get caught up in your Q rate. I don't even know my Q rate because that's not part of what my mental management game is. I really
Right.
would have no
Yeah.
idea. And I guess I would be aware of, like, if I had a problem that was preventing me from queuing, I would absolutely know what that problem was and I would work on that problem. Right. But
Right.
I can't tell you, I'm not going to look necessarily at things in that way because I think it puts then too much detail in the outcome. And so I've had students that are like, well, my goal is a mock. And I'm like, well, instead of the goal being the mock, which isn't a bad goal, but I don't like the end outcome. So I'm like, what is your goal to be able to train your dog so that can become a possibility? So
Right.
the goal should be, I need to connect with my dog. I need to work with my connection with my dog, or I need to work on motivation with my dog if I need more speed points, or I need to work on whatever it is that will maybe help you get that mock. But I don't
Yeah.
think saying I want my mock as a goal would be a super good goal, in my opinion. To me, if your dog doesn't make enough speed points to get a mock, it would be like, I need to work on, my goal is to motivate my dog so that we can be maybe a yards per second. I don't mind that calculation, yards per second faster or something, so I can get more points.
Yeah.
To me, that's a much better goal, because when you finish that goal, then your mock goal will actually probably happen. But I don't like thinking, like, my
Right.
goal would never be, even though I love it, my goal would never be like, I'm going to go win EO, because
Yeah.
that is not a good goal in my
Right.
opinion. It's
No.
not even up to, that outcome may not be up to me at all. So I
Correct.
think that is a great goal. But my goal is, can I have all the skills on those type courses to help me get into finals? And then I
Hmm.
always feel like when you're in finals, it can be almost anybody, because everybody in finals has an equal chance.
Yeah.
So more process oriented than say, oh, that is my end goal. My goal is never to end up on a box. I end up, I think, on many boxes because I can have my goals of, I can make my dogs faster. I can make my dogs, I can work on my running dog walk. I can work on this or that, so I can go cleaner. I can work on
Yeah.
turn, nimble, because sometimes that is one of our weaknesses. And if I fix that weakness, then yes, it makes us a stronger team, and a stronger team usually does end up on bigger things. But I don't try to make it my goal to win things.
Right.
I think that's a very disappointing goal for many people if they were to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is too. So are you, in order to work on those things, are you like at the end of a weekend, do you write like notes, like feedback, or do you just keep it all in your head? Or but like, because I feel like if you start to see a trend, you can be like, okay, there was 2 wide turns this weekend. Like I gotta do that. Or is it just all swimming around in your brain?
I am very aware mentally without writing things down. We have two very big training things that I am working on right now. And
Okay.
so I'm aware of them. I do have them written down, and I do consciously, like, if I have a problem with a course, I will keep that course map and I will sort of circle the areas of where I had some issues, so that I can see if there's a trend. Like, if it happens just once, I'm not going to worry about it. If my dog were to miss one running dog walk, I'm not going to worry about it too much. If they miss that same exit or that same entry, and then they miss that running dog walk 4 times, I'm working on that to fix
Yeah.
that. Right. So I like to see, a trend isn't one, it's, 2 or 3 or more. And if I do have, that trend, then I am going to go start training that. But I do have sort of a list of training things for each dog. For sure. I have this dog needs this dog needs that. And then I also have maintenance skills, sort of written down, and it's different for dog to dog. What Truant needs is maintenance skills, Nimble may not need. So I definitely have things written down for each dog on my training and where I need to work on things. So yes, the answer is yes to that. Absolutely. And I do keep course maps. I have students that come in, they're like, my dog had this bar. I'm like, okay, that's not helpful to me.
Show me. Right.
You need to keep all your course maps with all the bars that you're having, because there are thousands of grids, there are thousands of different ways to teach different jumping things, and you're not going to do all of them to any dog, because to me that's unfair and probably boring to the dog, because
Right.
they might not need 90% of them. They need, if it's, well, when I have a slice approach and I bend to the left, my dog knocks that bar. Okay, well, now we know, and we've
Yeah.
isolated what the issue is. Well, let's go train that and set up some things to help your dog improve that.
Yeah.
So I really do like people, if they're having mistakes on a course, circle the course, keep the course. And if you see the same mistake several times over and over on different courses, but it's the same, kind of turn or whatever, then yes, we need to address that to make you better and
Yeah.
more successful.
Yeah. Perfect. Perfect. I have to confess, I've used you as an example before without your name. I was setting bars at Palmyra up at in the net one, and it was probably for the 12-inch or 16 or something. I wasn't running, so it's probably 12. And you came across the dog walk. Your dog was in. The judge did not call it, but you didn't like it, and you took your dog off.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I've used that as an example is I think it is so important for people to hold their criteria above those, again, outcome goals, right? Yet you were queuing, you could have queued, you could have finished the run, but that would not obviously have satisfied your longer term goals. And the way I talk about it is every run, again, from the outside, I was a bar setter. Like, what did I know about what was in your head or what your goals were? But from the outside, it was no, the long game. I'm doing this as an investment. Every run is an investment in a future run or in a future, EO or something, some other thing that you had. And I was like, I almost wanted to like clap, right? Because as like looking at it from like a mental aspect, I was like, you are the only handler probably that weekend, that month, whatever, who stepped in that building, who was willing to like, no, it's not about the queue. I didn't like where your foot was. Like, we're leaving. And of course, memory is probably, changing the exact details of the moment, and because it was a couple years ago or whatever. But I just think that that is such a hard thing to get through to some handlers, of like looking at the long game and looking at it as a bigger part of a bigger picture.
I know that with and again, you have to know the personality of the little dog and if it's helpful or not. I have one dog that if I were to take him back and ask him to repeat something, he won't, he gets a little bit more thoughtful, and then it almost gets worse. So for him,
Mm,
maybe I would let things go unless it was really blatant and really not what I wanted.
yeah.
And you have a dog like Nimble. If I were to allow her to do too many teeters or have a teeter fly off and go on, it would not be great. I also am very careful about doing a fix and continue, because it's still reinforcing for her for when she goes back to do it. She'll go back and
Right.
do it correctly, but it doesn't always fix the problem, because I now have still reinforced the first behavior that I didn't like. So for her, it is actually much better for me to walk her off. And I don't do it. I'm not mad at her when it happens. It's
Oh
just
no, you were just like gave it away,
the
picked up the
criteria,
dog, like
yeah, let it
nonchalant.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not gonna yell at my dog, or I still
No.
love my dogs. Um, but for her particularly, I have to remove her so she can't get further reinforcement from a mistake in behavior. And
Yeah.
so, and again, it's just her personality. There are other dogs that fix and continues will absolutely fix it, and you have to always weigh like how much desire does your dog have in the sport and in the game. If they have a lot of desire, then removing them from being further reinforced really will fix the issue probably the best. Take a broken strut line stay. A lot of times, yes, for some dogs, if you just put them back in a fix and continue, well, maybe they're going to hold that stay for the rest of their lives, or at least a month or two or whatever, until you may have to do that again. For other dogs, if you do that, they're like, oh, I'm going to break it next time too. So you
Mm-hmm.
have to know the personality of your dog. And if it is I am going to break it again next time too, then maybe they do get removed. I do believe that I am personally not usually, and I say usually because we're all infallible, or not infallible, but I am usually not willing to let my dog have a behavior in the ring that I don't like, especially on a local level, for a green ribbon that day. That's going to
Yeah.
hurt me from being successful in the future in general. Now, if I were at AKC Nationals and it's round two and my teeter, it's agility and my teeter
Sure.
is down and legal, but not waited for that release. Am I going to do that no, I'm probably not going to do that at nationals. I'm going to be like, all right, but then I'm
Right.
going to go to a local trial after, and I'm going to try to make her break it. Right. Like
Mm-hmm.
I may let her have that at nationals, but my very next trial at home locally, where I again don't care so much about the green ribbon, I'm going to do whatever I can do to try to entice her to make a mistake.
Yeah.
So I can teach her that, in the ring, I don't want dogs to become ring wise, where they have one behavior in training. Cause I have lessons like, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
my whatever is broken, and I'm like, okay, well, we can't break it in training because we will try, and I have some different ways to try to make them make a mistake. But I'm like, your dog obviously knows that in the ring you have a whole set of different rules, which I personally
Yep.
find really unfair to the dog, because the dog doesn't know what the performance expectation is. So
Yeah.
that makes me a bit sad that dog really doesn't know what the regulations are, and of course they're going to make more mistakes, or other behaviors are going to develop. And then once those behaviors develop, like someone quick releases, early releases, they're say stop dog walk. Well, after a while, that dog's gonna be like, okay, well, it's a different behavior. Do I stop early? Do I stop
Right.
here? And then now all of a sudden they're coming into position slowly, and then people get sad, so they release them earlier and earlier, and then dog starts missing it. Well,
Yep.
I don't think the dog's at fault there.
Right.
I think truly that the person didn't hold criteria, and now they've completely changed the dog's perception of what their job is. And
Yeah.
I do then get sad at the dog.
Yeah.
So, and I know it's hard as people. So
Mm-hmm.
I have a couple students, and they are sometimes really bad at that even in class. And I was like, how do we fix you? We had to find a way to fix
You.
it. And so they were
Right.
like, we're going to give you money every time. And I'm like, that works for me. I think they give me a quarter every time
Everybody's
for that.
happy.
And then they come back from a trial and they're like, here's $1. I was really bad. And it was like,
Like,
just don't do that to your dog.
sounds like a $5 mistake, but okay.
Exactly.
That's funny. So to wrap, I want to ask you about like any like I call them rituals, which is like those morning, like from the time you wake up in the morning to the time you walk into the ring, like the habits and the things that are like these non-negotiables. And I guess that's why I use the term rituals because they're non-negotiables for me. Like, making sure my dog is walked, making sure that I listen to music when I'm walking the course, making sure so da, da, da. So like do you have any like a set of rituals and do places like Westminster where the environment is so different, does it throw you off, or how do you maintain your things that you always do, those habits that are, foundational and very grounding to the rest of your day?
So I definitely have rituals. I like to warm up myself, so I want to be ready to run. So I'm going to do some light stretch and some active, warm up myself for me. Also for my dog. My dog is always going to be well warmed up and cool down after the competition, because I want to make sure that they don't get injured and
Mm-hmm.
they're ready to run their best. I definitely listen to music in the ring as I'm walking. I try to not pay attention to too many other people in the ring necessarily,
It's
unless
part
I
of the
have
reason I
really,
like my music.
yeah, yeah, so I can ignore others. Now, that doesn't mean that like, I certainly have the ability and it's probably a great thing. If I have, say, a gamble plan and gambler finals at the US Open, and I happen to be one of the later dogs running, so I'm watching the other, I've been notorious for doing this sometimes. I'm watching on live stream other dogs running, and I see a plan that has more points than mine and the same, and I know I can do that plan. I will swap plans. And I haven't walked the
Yeah.
other plan, but I have walked the course, so I know where all the equipment is. So I can go
Right.
change my plan and execute a different plan if it's a better plan than mine. Because if I already know someone's out there with a better plan, somebody in my group probably is going to either maybe take that plan or something too. So I've been adaptable. If I am watching a course, and sometimes at big competitions, I will watch the rotation before me. I want to kind of see, is there anything I missed on my walkthrough that dogs are seeing? A,
Mm-hmm.
and can I fix that and be proactive about fixing that? So if I do see like, oh wow, that blind cross is just not working there. Every dog's going off course. Well, I'm going to adapt my handling when I get ready to run. I'm not going to handle it that way. And I'm always
Right.
surprised that people don't do that. Like they stick to their plan and then it doesn't work. I always want to be, I can switch plans. We've done a lot of at different teams. There was one team where we had to play snooker in the event. And so they made us literally as we were walking up, okay, you have a new snooker plan. Here it is, go do it.
Uh,
And so that's tricky, but a lot of those type mental games really also help you be able to change your handling at the last minute if you need it.
yeah.
Or I go to a lot of events. I was at the Classic last week and a lot of people weren't getting through snooker. So it was like, okay, you need to dial down your plan, change it around. We didn't get to walk it again. You just need to be able to do it on the fly. And so
Right.
I do think that helps. So being able to do that mentally really, really does help. So I will watch what some people are doing in some dogs just to make sure I haven't missed anything on my walkthrough. Because as much as we're very careful on looking at dog lines and what they'll see, sometimes things happen that you don't,
Yeah.
see in the walkthrough. So I will go make sure by watching a few as part of my warm up and getting ready of what are the dogs actually doing out there. And of course, and obviously more at bigger events than smaller events. Sometimes at small events, I don't even do a walkthrough.
Mm.
Just again, I think it's somewhat helpful mentally to be able to
Yeah.
go without a walkthrough. And I
Yeah.
know Blue Ridge used to do this, and I live pretty far from Blue Ridge. And so when they would do, I think, walk, run, run, and the 16s would be
Oh, uh-huh.
an hour later. Well, I wasn't going to get there an hour and a half later for a walkthrough. So I would just come later and I would be like, okay, I can watch a few dogs and then go.
Yeah.
But I think that
But
was
what great
actually,
mental practice, like to be
it
able to
was
do
good mental
that.
practice and
Yeah.
also let me sleep a little later. So it
Yeah.
had a benefit. But
Everybody wins.
I do have, certain rituals, at a bigger event. I will mentally perform that course several times during my walk, my warm up with my dog to make sure that I really, really have it. And then I will play with my dog and I just try to stay as connected as I am coming into the ring. And then once I go in the ring, I still even have a ritual. I like to tell my dogs good luck before we leave.
I
The
love that.
before I leave my stay, I say good luck, and I usually kiss Nimble too. Not Truant because he'd probably knock me down, but he's very exuberant. He's an exuberant dog. But I do tell them good luck, and then I try to really remember that it is a sport I love, and I love doing it with my dogs, and just to go enjoy it no matter what happens.
That's great. That's perfect. Yeah, I love the good luck thing. I always say thanks for playing with me
Oh, that's
because
great.
yeah, because it reminds you that just what you're saying. Like it's not their idea to do this,
Yeah,
right? Like thanks for doing this with me. Like this is cool. Let's yeah. So
yeah,
I love that's the last thing. And I think it's a good like mindset twist. You're not like, "Oh my God, tunnel." You're leaving with like, "No, this is my why. This is why I do this. We're going to have fun. Good luck." I
yeah.
love that.
Yes.
All
And I tried not to rush any start. I think that's why start
right.
line stage is so important to me,
Mm-hmm.
unless you're working on motivation with a dog.
Sure.
But I really do like the calmness, particularly with a dog like Nimble, the calmness as I am walking out, because I know
Yeah.
once I release, things are going to happen. really
Yeah.
fast. So
Yeah.
I sort of like that calm before, it's not really a storm because I don't think our runs are like storms, but it's
No.
before, okay, now we're going. So
Yeah.
it's sort of like the horses coming into at the Kentucky Derby, they're getting in the gates and it's sort of, and then all of a
Right.
sudden the gates go and it's like madness for a minute.
Right.
It's not really
Right.
madness. They're all in control, I'm sure.
Yeah. But you want them to enter the gate calm, right? You
Yes.
want them to know their job,
Yeah.
right? And that is really important for everybody. Cool.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Well, awesome. Well, I want to keep us to our time and respect your time. I know you've got a busy day, and I couldn't thank you more. And I love all of the things that you believe for mental management. So you're singing the song of my people. So thank you for
Awesome. That's
that.
wonderful. Thank you
And
so
for
much for having me.
yeah, it's been a huge pleasure and good luck with everything. I can't wait to cheer you on.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Nice to talk with you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Mindset Coaching for Handlers podcast with me, Julie Bacon. I am so grateful for your precious time. Check out my Dogged Planner workbook and journal available on Amazon. Just search for Dogged Planner. I also offer monthly membership that's perfect for ongoing support of your awesome goals. Check out theqcoach.com for details or just stop by and check out all the ways you can work on your mindset. And be sure to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at theqcoach and let me know how it's going. Finally, please share, subscribe, and leave a review. This helps us podcasters tremendously. Plus, I know I get my best podcast recommendations from friends. Thanks and have a great week with your dogs.